This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Friday morning break with me, Dr. Poppy Gibson, and I hope you've had a wonderful week. I'm really excited because we have got two guests on the show today to talk about a nice topic for a change. We're going to be talking about how we make school fun. And just before I introduce our first guest, I just want to make it clear that I know we have listeners from all different backgrounds, some of you teaching in the early years, primary school, secondary, college, or some of you like me teaching at university level. So I want us to think really just how we make education fun. So our first guest, we're going to be talking about primary school, and later on today, our second guest will be focusing more with secondary and higher study. But I'm sure when we look back at our own school experience, we can really remember those things that were fun. I mean, we might also remember the things that weren't so fun. But what I want us to think about today is how we can really inspire our learners through doing things that are engaging, a little bit different. Because one thing we all agree on, I'm sure, is that education is very much within boundaries sometimes and within boxes. And I think what's really exciting is the two people that are coming on the show today have thought about ways we can approach learning outside the box. So without further ado, I can see our first guest is here. So good morning, Dave.
Morning, Poppy. How's things?
So good. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, I was dead excited to get involved. Something a bit different.
Very exciting, very exciting. So I've got a whole load of questions for you this morning, Dave. I hope that's okay.
All good with me. Yeah, bring it on.
And for those that know Dave, and I'll get him to introduce himself in a minute, you will know that he's done some very exciting and fun things with his learners and with his school. So I am just so happy that you're here with us on Teachers Talk Radio. So maybe before I jump in with my questions, Dave, can you tell us a bit about you, your background, and your current role, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm Dave McPartlin. I'm the head teacher at Fleet Primary School. We're up in Fleetwood, relatively small town, 30,000 or so, but we're just down the road from Blackpool. We're a bit geographically isolated. We're 55% free school meals.
Okay.
So things are a little bit tough at the moment with the cost of living crisis and so on. But I absolutely love my school. Been here 7 years, my second headship.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, I've been doing it a while. I was a bit young, my first headship, looking back, I think. But yeah, just enjoying it. Love my school. We do lots of, like you've alluded to, we do lots of fun things, I think.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so here we are. I don't know what you
Here we are.
Yeah, I don't know what questions you got lined up.
A lot, but all very nice ones based on the exciting stuff that I've seen you and your school have been up to. But I wondered, Dave, maybe before we talk about your school, have you got a particular fun memory from your own primary school experience that you can remember if you cast your mind back?
Oh, do you know what? Mine's nothing to do with school. I think probably my best memory at school was because I was a good lad. I was a bit of a swat. Me and one of my mates, we were allowed to go to the post office to buy stamps and post mail, like just during the school day. Those were the days. Can you imagine now?
Oh,
You know, can you go
I
pick my
love
parcel up
that.
from Every?
Not quite the same.
Not quite the same, but I might start doing it after today. But yeah, it's just funny, like it's little things like that you remember. It doesn't tend to be,
Yeah.
or being allowed to. We tried to build a rocket out of a washing up boat, the tubey things.
Yeah.
And I remember just being given the afternoon with Mr. Wilson. You go and do it. You know, it's the daft things that you remember in many ways, I think.
I love that. But even just from that post office story that you shared, like, I guess it's also thinking how you make children feel, isn't it? Like, you obviously felt trusted. You felt that you were given some responsibility. And that, I think that they're also ways we can make learning fun, aren't they? When we give children that autonomy and that agency.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's quite difficult in this world where health and safety sometimes feels like it's gone a little bit mad, and it is trying to figure out, everything's got to be risk assessed within an inch of its life. And I think it's trying to be sensible, and give, like you said, give children that responsibility. I think back, I've got three kids, and over Christmas, my 5-year-old and my 6-year-old, they wanted to cut the veg up. I remember thinking, I should have been giving them sharp knives, but God, I've never seen them be so careful.
Wow, I love
And it was,
that.
they were so quiet and took it really seriously. And I think there's a place for a bit of risk taking, isn't there? As long as it's as long as it's sensible. And that's often when the relationships, that's when you can grow and take relationships to a different place when you do show a bit of trust in them.
I love that. I totally agree, Dave. And because I've got 3 children myself, so snap. But I think you're right. I think it's also trying to think, not just children, like they're just young adults. Like one day they will need these skills and they will need to cut
Yeah.
vegetables. And so you're actually preparing them as well as, in the moment they're feeling that they're being trusted. But okay, let's get to school because we don't have that much time. We've got about half an hour with you and I have so many questions.
Go on, let's do it.
So maybe I know you've touched a bit on kind of your school demographic around free school meals, but maybe could you just let's just start off. Tell us a bit more about your school, and maybe again, I know you hinted a little bit about those challenges, but what really are these
Um,
biggest challenges facing your school and community?
I think at the minute, it's not just, even though we got 55% free school meals, I think everybody's been affected by the cost of living, everything, whether you've got a big house, a little house, rented, bought, everything's gone up in value. So if you do have a big house, mortgage probably gone up a lot more. Everyone's just a bit stressed, they're worried
Hmm.
about how they're paying for things when we're going to come through the other side.
Yeah.
But the real, we've got some families who are really living in poverty. They reckon 1 in 3 kids in Fleetwood lives in poverty, and that was pre-COVID data.
Wow.
So I dread to
Wow.
think what it's like now, and I think it's when you see it firsthand. I've been in a couple of houses fairly recently, and I don't think they'd mind me saying, but some of them, they don't have carpet on the floor. The buildings are not in great condition. We've had children begging for food, and I feel like I'm kind of revealed to it, but that's the level of desperation some of our families are feeling at the moment. It's one thing seeing it on some gritty BBC iPlayer drama, but when you're seeing it firsthand and the toll that it takes on families, no wonder some of our kids are struggling
Wow.
when life is feeling really, really tough at the minute.
Exactly. And I guess even more reason then that we need to make sure our classrooms are nurturing and fun and engaging, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For some of our kids, life is so stressful. You might not have a car, you might not be able to get about, you might not know where the next couple of quid for your electricity or your gas is coming from.
Yeah.
So school has to be really, I guess it's an oasis of calm, somewhere that they feel safe, they feel secure, that even when they mess up and they inevitably do things wrong or make mistakes like kids do, that we're there for them. We've got that and that's kind of what underpins everything that goes on here. It's the relational approach to behaviour. That
Amazing.
relationship that we have with the children, the families, is absolutely essential. I think way above and beyond everything else, to be totally honest.
That's so interesting. Do you know what? Yesterday with our students, Dave, as you know, I lecture on primary education degrees, and we were looking at the teachers' standards, and we were looking through. Obviously, you've got the 8 teacher standards in part one, all about assessment and everything, and then we were really focusing on that part two and how actually as a teacher your role is so much bigger than just teaching content, isn't it? And that part
Yeah.
two was all about safeguarding and ethics and being a professional. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. It's just really interesting you're bringing this up because this is really what I was trying to say to our students. Like when you go into teaching, you're not just teaching a maths lesson, like it's the stuff around that matters, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got kids. I see the children in the building more than I see my own. But, it's such a cliche,
Yeah.
but it's a cliche. But we are a family. We do care about them, and we need to be there when we're inevitably having to pick up the pieces. But you've got to get that relationship in place. And it's got to be genuine as well. I don't do this whole I'm a teacher, you respect me type thing. I think that's really outdated these days. That respect is earned. Yeah, I honestly, we're at 18 months down the relational approach to behaviour, and so
Mhm.
for some it really challenged them. But by me, by goodness, it's really working now. We're really
That's
seeing
amazing.
results.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about then. Let's go into this a little bit deeper. So it sounds like you're doing some great stuff. One thing I saw you've been doing is opening your own school coffee shop. Could you maybe
Yeah.
tell us like how did that come about and what
This
impact you're hoping to see with this?
do you know, we've done some daft things at school. You know, Britain's Got Talent, going for Christmas #1. But
Oh
this, like,
wow, we'll have to ask you
this,
more about that.
but this is like our uniform literally says "Dare to Dream" on the front of it. You know,
Wow.
trying to address aspirations over the last couple of years, and for a long time, I've really liked the idea of a community hub coffee shop, where we think that we do a great job within school. I think
Mhm.
most schools do, but a lot of the issues that our children and families are facing are on an evening, they're on a weekend. It might be mental health, loneliness, financial problems, and I really like the idea of all these, you know, groups, agencies, charities that can make a difference, all being based under one. Excuse me, all being based under one roof, and that's what we're doing. I
Definitely.
went looking for a bit of funding, found way more funding than I was expecting, and we've now got. Next week we'll be starting the renovation of our children's centre at the back to this swish coffee shop. We'll have PCSOs
Wow.
based in there, housing, social services,
What's
job
the coffee shop
seekers
going
and
to be
stuff.
called, Dave?
It's going to be called Strive, and it was interesting. I asked the kids in assembly last week when we revealed the name of it what the word strive meant, and one child out of 400 and odd, because we're two form entry, put his hand up and he did know. And I think part of the thinking is we want to get it into the vocabulary. Yes, you got to dare to dream, but you got to strive for success. You got to strive for achievement. You got to keep going. So it was deliberately chosen. You know, this building will help people to strive, to get back into work, to get fit, get healthy, maybe make new friends. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's we did our coffee tasting last week. We've been doing our
Wow.
home decor research at IKEA, but it's going to be lovely. It's going to be really nice cake,
So
really nice
who's serving
coffee.
the coffee? Who have you got behind the bar?
We've got, well, that's proven to be the hardest challenge, really. Like staffing it. We've already got a family support worker, pastoral support manager, three nurture staff, and a dog. You know, we've got the staff supporting our families already, but we
Mhm.
need to figure out how it's actually going to work over there. We've got quite a decent pot of money to pay for the staffing for the next 4 years, but we're just trying to figure out, like, working around breaks and when it's going to be busy and things like that. But it'll be an extension of what we've got already. We've got a brilliant offering for families, but this is just
It
taking it
sounds it.
to a whole different place.
It's so innovative. And who doesn't enjoy a nice hot drink? This is just a great idea.
Exactly.
Bringing
Proper
everyone
coffee as well.
together. Proper coffee. Yeah,
Um,
watch out, all those big competitors out there. Strive is coming.
Yeah, do you know what's been really nice? One of our ex pupils, Rupert, he's one of the national managers for Cafe Nero, and they've been really supportive. They're letting us have a load of free furniture. They're doing the barista training, you know, so we can get our parents trained up to be professional baristas.
Wow, that's
You
wonderful.
know, get them involved as much as we can.
That's brilliant. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That just shows, again, not only are we not just teachers, but school is not just school. Like school can have a coffee shop.
Yeah,
You're
why
just breaking
not?
down all the barriers. I love it so much.
It's nice to be disruptive. I have a feeling that you're probably a bit disruptive as well, Poppy.
I don't know what you're talking about, Dave.
Yeah, I'm convinced.
um, but you know what? That leads me to my next question. So this is quite good because you clearly sound like a big dreamer. You're telling your children dare to dream, but dreaming and making dreams reality can be exhausting, right? And so
Yeah, of
I
course it can.
wanted to ask you about the big word well-being, because you sound like your school is a really busy, fantastic place to be. But how do you, as a head teacher, how do you go about trying to balance staff well-being and school improvement? Because this sounds like maybe a bit of a tension.
I think it's an impossible tension, to be totally honest. We're very much, it'll be 5 years since Ofsted came in July, and trying to balance the well-being with moving the school forward can feel like an impossible task at times. And when you've got adults feeling the cost of living crisis, members of staff feeling it, trying to then put more pressure on by moving things forward, because there's inevitably in every job that there's going to be pressure and stress from time to time. It can feel, something, you know, insurmountable, that those challenges. But I think part of it is it's the culture that we create. We're very much all about psychological safety, you know, being able to take risks, owning your mistakes, challenging the status quo. So I think the culture that
Mhm,
we've
mhm.
created is really good. We've had very few staff of the 100 leave in the last 6 years. You know, I think three
Oh,
have
that's a
left.
good
So
sign.
yeah, I always think that. I'm really proud of that. I've been here 7 years, and hardly anybody's left, which I'm proud of. But
That's
it's
fantastic.
listening to staff. I think we do a lot of work with an education. It's not an educational psychologist, a psychologist. We've done a lot of work on knowing ourselves, knowing others, team dynamics, things like that. We've got the shared understanding of vocabulary. So it's just listening. I like to say good morning to everybody every day, see everybody, check in. But it does feel
Lovely.
particularly tough at the minute.
Wow, so it sounds like a very busy 7 years. What's kind of had the biggest impact on you as a leader in that 7 years, Dave?
Probably the spotlight profiles that we do, which is what I've just alluded to. The work that we've done on mindset and behaviour, and
Hmm.
just knowing myself. No, I'm quite outgoing. I'm probably quite not outspoken. I find it hard to keep my mouth shut, which I reckon you definitely have. But in a good way, and I think part of it is recognizing that not everybody is wired the same as me, and some people are a bit more
Hmm.
risk averse. Some people like to be a bit more organized. Being organized doesn't come naturally to me, and then just appreciating that we're all different, and that actually I want that. School of Daves wouldn't work. It'd probably be a really fun place, but we need to get a bit more done. And I think just appreciating that voice in the staff room who in the past could come across as being a bit negative. Actually, they're just risk averse. They're prudent. They don't want it to go wrong. They want to ask questions. They
Exactly.
want to pick it apart and make sure that it works. So I guess it's just that knowledge of self and of others that's been the game changer for me.
It's amazing. That sounds so impactful. And I think you're right though, when we think how we're wired as humans, back to our Neanderthal days where we were constantly in that, series of alertness and readiness. I think now some educators are quite happy when things are peaceful and not changing because we've lived through
Yeah,
millions of years of being worried about the next thing that's coming. So I do understand sometimes educators can be worried about change, but I think that's what's really cool when we get a visionary head like yourself, because things, society is changing, the world is changing, things are changing all the time. So I do think we need to change as a result, right?
yeah. I mean, you're working with your students, and the world has just changed so quickly, particularly over the
Mhm.
last couple of years. I don't know if you've heard of that Chat GBT, the
Oh, yes.
artificial intelligence. But I've been messing around with that. That didn't exist two or 3 months ago, and I think
No.
changing things in education can be so it's so difficult. It can take such a long time. Turning in an oil tanker is a good analogy, but it's probably much harder than that. I actually think when COVID kicked in, we all had to reinvent schools overnight. Look at how flexible and how quick we were to adapt and do what was right for our communities. And in many ways, I liked that freedom. It was
Hmm.
liberating. We weren't worried about Ofsted coming in. And we were all free to go in the direction that we thought was best for our kids and community. And I kind of like that. I wish we could have hung on to a bit more of that, if I'm honest.
It sounds like you are. A
Yeah,
little bit.
trying. It's
You're
not
still
easy
going.
though. Not easy.
So I've got to be honest, the main thing that I know our listeners want to talk about today is the very cool thing you did where you had an attempt at Christmas #1. And am I right that you got a golden buzzer on Britain's Got Talent? Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow. Tell
yeah.
us
That
all
was
about this, please. We want to hear all about
well.
it.
Well, basically, we came up with this dreams list in school. The whole idea was I wanted everyone to talk about dreams. It's one of those things where if I said to you, what's your dream? You might tell me truthfully, but some people that you've got that filter. What my family going to say? Can I afford it? Is it ridiculous? Kind of working class lad from up north. Can you do that? And the whole idea was we wanted our children to just think about what it meant to dream, to have these big audacious goals, and we came up with a list of 420 of them up in the staff room. And over a course of 6-8 months, we tried to tick off as many as we could. We fed the
Mhm.
homeless. Some of the kids were princesses. Some of them, we had kids driving around in sports cars on the estate. We had Aston Martins. We had kids flying around
Wow.
in, nothing was off the table. Even one of them wanted to go. A couple of them wanted to go skydiving. So we found an indoor skydiving place in Manchester. We took them there.
What? And they
And
did
and
it. Some
yeah,
children went
yeah,
skydiving.
yeah, 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 yeah. They did it. And
You're
what was
blowing my mind,
interesting,
Dave.
but when you look at these things, you might not be able to go actual skydiving, but we could find somewhere where the wind blew them up in the air. And, it was
Hmm.
just carte blanche to dare to dream, to think big, to get carried away. And one of the things was we went for Christmas #1, which we got completely carried. I mean, we literally We doorstepped Chris Evans. We turned up in central London in the middle of the night. Literally took us up to, dressed as elves, took us up the studio. Then
How
by the next
many
week,
children? How many children did you have?
took 3 to that one. Staff
Oh.
thought I took staff kids middle of the night, set off 1 o'clock in the morning. Thought I'd lost the plot, but we actually found him. Then we found Phil Schofield. So buoyed by that success, somebody donated us a battle bus that took us around Liverpool, Manchester.
Wow.
I toured all my old schools in the northeast. But we literally went down to Good Morning Britain in This Morning studios, middle of the night, pitch black, freezing cold, singing to them. They ended up taking us into the studios. They were going to put us on, and then Theresa May quit. Had a leadership contest, so we didn't make it on. But just all these daft things happened. We had a plane flying around with a banner on the back of it, Flick for number one. We had parents giving out flies all over the country. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was amazing. And that was all from like a daft idea where we write our own song. And then Britain's Got Talent. We got offered an audition. Just wanted the kids to meet Ant and Dec, to sit there on a Saturday night with the takeaway and watch themselves back on telly. And that was the goal. That was it. Literally, most of our kids had never been to Manchester. I just wanted like a fun, mad trip out. And anyway, we did a daft little performance. And the next thing you know, the crowd are pressing, shouting, "Press the gold." And I'm crying my eyes out by this point. I'm thinking, that's never happened. Next thing I go, we've got a golden buzzer. And, our 55 kids, 55% free service, 6 nights, all expenses paid in central London, living the dream, okay, photo shoot on all the TV channels. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely. David Williams came to school in his helicopter, landed on the field, did an assembly. Yeah. But there'll be loads of people watching thinking, God, we're better than that choir. And they were, they probably were, but we didn't take ourselves too seriously. We had a laugh. We just went for it. And I guess my point is with parents, staff, community, anybody, is if you've got a dream, how many of us ever regret giving it a go? You're never going to regret giving it a go. You're proud of the fact that you've stepped up. So it's been a mad couple of
definitely
years.
Stepped up. I don't think anyone can disagree that was not stepped up. And I don't know if you can see the chat, Dave, but we've got Ken who's listening who said, "You're inspiring. I want to be Dave when I grow up."
I agree. Kind. Thanks, Ken. I don't touch my phone to be honest, in case I turn myself off. I can see them now. I can see them. Hiya, Ken.
Yeah, wonderful. Wow, so inspiring. And so I can see how then this links to the Dare to Dream logo on the front of your uniform. What impact do you think this is having on your pupils? These things. What's the purpose? The pupils and parents.
I think everybody is just a bit more confident at giving things a go. After we've done some of these things, I know parents suddenly said that they'd started travelling to places they wouldn't have gone in the past, or signed up for driving lessons, or when they got involved in the Christmas number one, they did a lot of marketing and they ended up going on to get jobs on the back of that because their confidence had grown, or they'd made friends. Now, like we did a COVID nativity a couple of years back. David Williams narrated it. We sent some cheeky messages. Phil and Holly did a little video. Amanda Holden, all sorts of cool people. And we asked the kids to audition to be in our COVID nativity. And I'm literally not exaggerating. Of the entire year group of 60, every single child auditioned, which we never used to have. They stood in front of us. They did a bit of acting, and I think. Now they know when we give something a go, we really do it properly. Like we do Flake Fest on the field. We hire a huge stage.
I love it, Flake Fest.
Huge stage, 1,500 people, remote control fireworks on the roof, pit barriers, security guards, and our kids get to perform on that stage. We get, we've had Honey G and all sorts of random acts come and perform. And lots of people thought we'd lost the plot, but the reality is it was dead easy. Got 1,500 people paying a couple of quid each. We put a pretty good show for that. I just think anybody listening, if you're going to do something, do it properly. What would it look like if you turn the dial up to max, turn up to 10 and get a bit carried away? What might that look like?
Wow, I love that. I'm sure all our listeners, whether you're listening live or on the podcast, will feel inspired by this. So you've heard it from Dave. Turn the dial up to max. That's our new ambition for 2023. That's so exciting. So it's bring me just time for our last question. I'll be honest, Dave, I'm almost worried to ask you this last question because I feel I'm going to open a can of worms.
Go on.
But I want to ask, what is next for you and your school Flake Fleet? What is
What's
coming?
next? I think
Or
the
have you
coffee
done
shop is on.
everything?
No, no, God, no, God, no. Do you know? Do you know what? I'll let you in on a secret, Poppy. What I like to do. I like the idea of it, one Christmas, we take our kids off to like Hollywood and film like our nativity somewhere absolutely ridiculous. I don't know, just daft stuff. I don't know. For me, I'm not going anywhere. I absolutely love my school. I'm lucky that I get out and about speaking at different things and meeting all sorts of amazing people. But I think the coffee shop at the minute, that is, I mean, the level that we're going to take it to is just, it's unheard of, really. I'm so lucky that we managed to secure this funding. No strings attached. We can do what we want. Get all these agencies involved. Really change lives. It's such a cliche, but everybody working with kids, you're changing lives and communities, and I think we forget that too easy. But that's the next bit. What can we do when everybody else really gets involved? And I don't know. I'm just still excited by that, I guess.
So exciting. Yeah, obviously the impending coffee shop. Did you say that's next week opening?
Start next week. We start
Oh, with the
building.
conversion of the
Start with the
setup. Okay.
conversion next week.
When are you hoping for the launch?
June half term, I think.
Is it
But
open for the public?
yeah, it'll be open
Can I
to the
come grab
public.
a hot chocolate?
You are. I mean, where are you based, Poppy? I have a feeling you're quite far away.
Well, I'm in London, but I mean, for the right hot chocolate, I will travel.
Yeah, we'll get you to come and speak or something. We'll tie it into something else. Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Very cool. And if it's okay, if you're happy to, Dave, if people, any educators listening who felt inspired, are you happy for people to follow you, connect with
reach
you, look
out,
at your
send us a message.
website? What's the
Yeah,
best way you're happy for listeners to contact you?
Twitter, Dave_McPartlin. I'll just Google
Brilliant.
Flake tweet.
Fantastic. I know a lot of people are on Twitter that are listening, so hopefully they'll find you through the Teachers Talk Radio link anyway.
Yeah, anybody who's on the same page, get in touch.
Amazing. Well, I just want to say, just thank you for all you're doing. I wish that you'd been my head teacher.
That's very kind. Thank you.
And my students, the amount of students that I was talking to yesterday, and we were thinking back to inspiring teachers from when they were at school, and some really stand out, but not all do, and not all leaders do. So it's actually really refreshing to hear from a leader that is so passionate but just such a dreamer. I just think you are really inspiring. You are like making change and inspiring on a daily basis. So, and you've inspired me. So I'm just so grateful for your time today.
No, if you ever want me to speak to the students, count me in. I just think it's we need to look after our students, though, and I get the impression that you're very much doing that. So you keep doing what you're doing as well.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely going to take you up on that. Hopefully coming to Anglia Ruskin very soon.
Count me in.
Thank you, Dave. I wish you a wonderful weekend. Do try and rest after all this hard work you're doing in school, please.
Thanks, Poppy.
Take care, Dave.
See you later.
And look after yourself. We're now going to go over for our news. So in about 8 minutes' time, do come back when we will be joined by our second guest and educator, Ken Powell.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The Christian Institute website carries a story on the reminder by Minister of State for Schools Nick Gibb that schools in England have a duty to remain politically impartial in their teaching and extracurricular activities. The guidance was published last year, but Mr Gibb was responding to MP Miriam Cates' references to a YouGov poll, which appears to reveal that the majority of UK children are being taught political ideology as fact, and he issued the reminder. Ms Cates was referencing a view that children are being taught that they can be born in the wrong body, as well as resources being used in schools which focus on the topic of gender identity. The DFE guidance comes as Scotland attempts to introduce new legislation on gender recognition, which is opposed by Westminster. The guidance states that schools should not under any circumstances work with or use materials produced by external agencies that take extreme political positions. The Varsity website reports on findings by a right-wing think tank that elite universities were more likely to use progressive terminology on their websites. Cambridge tops the table in the Radical Progressive University Guide, although the think tank Civitas does not appear to see this as a positive. Varsity highlights comments reported in the Daily Mail, which warned that half of our universities peddle their woke agenda to students. The think tank generated the findings after exploring university websites and news reports, looking for a series of key phrases including trigger warning, white privilege, and anti-racism. Those with high incidences of key phrases were at the top of the table. Varsity acknowledges a view that Cambridge's political culture is to the left of the national one, but also highlights key figures in academia who feature prominently in the conservative press. It's hard to stay away from politics as announcements of strikes continued late last week. The TES reports on the continued deadlock in Scotland, whilst the Evening Standard covers talks between ministers and unions in England after the NEU confirmed strike dates for the coming weeks and months. These strikes are set to impact schools in England and Wales, although the BBC further reports on talks in Wales. Its news website reports that teachers and school leaders have been offered a one-off payment by the Welsh Government, similar to that offered to health workers, although unions have already said that the offer is not enough. Scottish media outlets have also carried a story about what it describes as fears about violence in schools. A clip, now widely shared on social media, shows an altercation between two students and that took place on the same day a male pupil was left unconscious following an assault. Whilst Police Scotland have said it's investigating both incidents, it has sparked debate on the state of behaviour in schools, particularly as such incidents have featured in headlines before. The Scottish Government has previously stated they're investing an additional £15 million this year to enhance capacity to effectively meet the needs of young people, and that they were very clear that violence is unacceptable. In further political news, the petition put forward by three men known as the Three Dads Walking will go to Parliament. The men, who all lost daughters to suicide, want to get suicide prevention on the school curriculum. The petition they set up now has more than 155,000 signatures, which means that it will be discussed in Parliament, after previously failing to be heard. Finally, more than 20,000 defibrillators will be sent to almost 18,000 state-funded schools by the end of the academic year. It comes after the government committed to ensuring there was a device in every school last year. The rollout comes after campaigning from the Oliver King Foundation and its founder, Mark King, whose son died at 12 from a cardiac arrest while swimming at school. Guidance to support schools has been created, including awareness videos. And Education Secretary Gillian Keegan praised the work of the Oliver King Foundation and described the rollout as a huge milestone. Mr. King stated, "Defibrillators save lives," and that he hoped that families do not have to suffer the heartbreak of unnecessarily losing a child. This is for our Ollie. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, a while ago I asked you what is your go-to piece of tech. This week I had the pleasure of talking to Ian Kenyon, CEO of Wirral Respite and Alternative Provision, also known as WRAP for short. So, Ian, what is your go-to piece of tech in your setting?
Thanks, Steve. In our organisation, we are absolutely embedded in sharing our information and our data via the cloud. And there's loads of software out there to do it. And there's a lot of bespoke software for our type of organisation, student information management services, the likes of SIMS or Arbor or things like that. But unfortunately, they're all built around big organisations, big schools, schools with up to 1,200 students. Certainly not for schools that have a turnaround of students who are completing courses in 12 weeks, and those students who are potentially returning but require new files. We've tried proprietary software. It's very, very expensive. But actually what we've fallen back to is what Google provides. Using G Suite, which is now Google Workplace, we have access to spreadsheets, to form filling software for data collection, Google Docs, which is, you're very familiar with everything via traditional Microsoft Offices. Being able to link docs and sheets and forms together has been almost transformational for our organization. It's not the cheapest, I will say. The per user price matches what other software like Zoho or Microsoft will do, but offers a simpler version for us, and offers us some interactivity that we've never had before. It handles our email, it handles our student information, so gathering attendance, it handles our finance, so invoicing. The way that the suite works, the way that the package works, just works really well for us. But with very little additional investment in time, effort and training, Google offers us everything that we need. The final sort of element that has been transformational for us is then being able to use proprietary hardware such as Chromebooks or even Android phones, and the ability for us to then transfer our data and to be live in the cloud at all times has been a really good thing for our organisation. So there you have it, my number one go-to. It's definitely got to be Google Workplace.
Thank you, Ian. As always, I'd love to hear what you want to know about tech. Do you have a go-to piece of tech? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
So welcome back, and great to see so many live listeners. And even for those of you listening back on the podcast, welcome to the Friday morning break here on Teachers Talk Radio with me, Poppy Gibson. And thank you so much to Dave, head teacher, who joined us before the break. And now we're back with a brand new, shiny second guest, Ken Powell. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can perfectly.
That's fantastic. I have been so nervous thinking this is just not going to work. The mic won't work or things like that. And then I'll go to pieces so fast you get hit by shrapnel. Oh.
No, welcome. It's all working. Yeah, welcome to my world. That's literally my daily stress is, will the microphone work? But you're here. We can hear you perfectly. And we are just so excited to ask you today about how we make learning fun. So maybe you can just start, Ken. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then I've got an icebreaker question for you.
Okay, that sounds cool. But first of all, I just have to say, I really should have been on first, because how the heck do you follow Dave? He's just incredible.
Wasn't he amazing?
Energy. Yeah, it's just like that. That's so intimidating. Well, it would be intimidating if he wasn't such a lovely guy. He's so nice, isn't he? So,
well, yeah. Ken, I only have great guests, as I said to you. So please do not feel intimidated. Dave was inspiring, and I know you're here to inspire us too. So tell us a bit about you, your background, and your links to education, please.
Okay, so well, I mean, I've been in the game, as it were. I've been teaching since 1992. Originally in music, but I'm a lifelong learner, so I've got qualifications and things in various different areas, and I've ended up teaching all sorts of different subjects. So I started off down in Cambridge, where I did my first 2 or 3 degrees, and I taught in a school there, did my teacher training with Cambridge University, and then moved up to Cumbria, which is where I am now, and have been sort of for the last 23 years, and became a deputy head of music at a local school here. Had 8 wonderful years there, which were just wonderful. Like Dave was saying with his school, you know, he doesn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave there either. But my family kind of got called to go right over to the other side of the world, and we ended up in Bangladesh.
Wow.
Yeah. So I ended up
as you do.
As you do, yeah, just a casual thing. Yeah. Oh, let's do that for a change. Yeah, my wife and I took our kids over to Bangladesh, where I taught O-level subjects and trained teachers in teaching O-level subjects for an English medium school in a real kind of rural backwater place, really, where it's just about as poor as you get. And it was part of a medical NGO called LAM that was out there. My wife ran the rehab centre, which was part of the hospital there. And,
wow.
And I trained staff and taught students a whole range of different subjects. And we did that for a wonderful 5 or 6 years. That again was just absolutely wonderful. They're just life changing. And we finally came back to Cumbria in 2014. And I've been here in sunny St. Bees ever since, where I'm not in the classroom any longer. I go into other people's classrooms around the world. I give some advice to schools, particularly in Asia, and most of all in Bangladesh, where we've kept that connection going. And I help teachers to just improve their teaching practice there. And for the rest of the time, when I'm not writing books, I'm a private tutor, which is mostly online, although I do have a few face-to-face students. But I spend most of my time sitting at a computer looking at somebody, trying to help them do maths or psychology or English or various different subjects.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Ken, now I feel intimidated. What an educational and geographical background. That's incredible. Wow, we have so much to talk about. But maybe, so just a bit of an icebreaker before I really start to talk to you about education. Wow, you've taught so many things in so many places. Can you tell me, from a teacher's perspective, the most fun lesson or one of the most fun lessons you can remember teaching?
Well, gosh, now you see that's difficult, because when I was teaching in the classroom all the time, I always used to say to my wife, if I've had a bad lesson, I know it's a bad lesson if I haven't made the class laugh hysterically at least once.
I love that.
And other teachers used to say they always knew if I was in the school at the time teaching, because they knew exactly where I was, because that was the room where there was just huge guffaws of laughter, just roars of laughter going on. But I think probably the funniest lesson that I was ever involved with was it was in Bangladesh, and it was so funny. You know, when you talk about it was so funny you fell off your chair. Well, a student actually did. He's just got married recently. It's just, it was many years ago now, but I just remember it so clearly. He was laughing so hard, he just keeled over to the side and collapsed on the floor, and it was absolutely hilarious. And
I thought that was just
had
a
me rolling.
phrase.
So did I,
Wow.
up until that time, and it was just very, very funny that we were. And believe it or not, this was a GCSE chemistry lesson when that happened. Right, that was the
Wow.
thing. A chemistry lesson, like not known for its kind of like humor kind of moments, really.
I wouldn't say no, not something I would think of. Wow, I love that. So making your learners laugh, I think that's a really lovely thing that shows, they're having fun, they're engaging. I mean, hopefully laughing with you, Ken, not at you.
Oh, I'm fine with both, to be honest. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your experience in Bangladesh as well. Sounds incredible. So particularly, the first question I want to ask you then, especially with your almost global perspective there, I guess, what is the purpose of education?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and in some ways, I call myself an anti-educationalist, because
Ooh.
I've always struggled, especially in the early 2000s, where there was a real drive in schools to be pushing kids beyond certain grade boundaries, particularly in the core subjects, English and maths and so on. To be able to, those who were kind of working at about a D grade level back in the days when it was letter grades rather than 1 to 9, and to try and push them into that C grade. And there was a lot of me sort of saying, why are we doing this? Because very often the emphasis was on, get that education in there, whether they like it or not. And that was very much just kind of removing the fun of learning, I think, from the whole classroom experience. There were kids who just were coming into my classroom feeling really stressed and miserable because the pressure that was being put on them in their various other subjects. And it was, and I noticed that was quite a tricky thing. Now, it was very different teaching in Bangladesh, where you literally had students who were doing their homework by candlelight in a mud hut.
Wow.
Where they were living, and to get their homework for various subjects done, and for them, education really meant the possibility to go into careers that would transform not just their lives but their family lives, because they would go off to the cities or even across the world once they got degrees and things like that, and send money back to their villages, and make a real impactful difference in the lives of their families and their friends and their neighbors, and so on and so forth, as well as, of course, experiencing wonderful things that the modern world has to offer. And a real contrast between those two things. And I just find myself thinking education should be about enabling somebody to be the best person they can be, and to
Yeah, I love that.
enjoy that process in getting there. Not a case of factory farming students to produce certain qualifications that has been demanded they must get, and making their lives miserable, and making sure that they never darken the doors of education ever again once they've left at 16 or 18 or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, I love what you're saying there, Ken. Be the best person they can be. I totally agree. Education should be a doorway, right? Not just.
Mm,
I love that reflection there on how education really was that doorway to a better future for many of those students fleeing Bangladesh, for their families, but also, exactly as you say, I totally agree, about a doorway to being a better you, and a you that understands yourself and is content with yourself, and
yeah.
can do better and bigger things in the world, whatever those might look like. And also what you're saying there, it shouldn't just be about that academic side, should it?
No, all my students have always been academic. They've always done kind of like the GCSEs and the A levels and things like that. That's the kind of the level that I'm working at. But it should be about kind of like coming away sort of saying, you know what, I actually really enjoyed that. It isn't just about getting that A level or getting that maths qualification and things like that. They have their place, of course, that's important. But it is about I want to build lifelong learners, because that's what I am. And I think if you do that, to a certain extent, somebody can then really own their own education. And I'm very much into the idea of students owning their education
I love that.
taking their own direction with that. But you can only do that if you're inspiring and making things fun, making it interesting, and making them come away sort of saying, yeah, you know what, I didn't want that to end.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, because I like what you're saying. But if I think back to, many years ago, doing my GCSEs, doing my A levels, I certainly think my teachers' viewpoints were, you just need to learn how to do this exam in the way it needs to be done to be graded well, and you just need to do it that way. And I just remember lots of mock exam papers and dry questions. So I guess my question for you then is, should education be fun? Because I know the theme for today's show is, how do you make education fun? But should it actually be fun at those higher levels like GCSE and A levels, or is fun more? Has Dave, our previous guest, has he got it easier because he's in the primary school? Can we make GCSE and A levels fun? And should we?
I mean, first of all, Dave definitely doesn't have it easier. Primary school teaching, my goodness, there's so much energy that's needed in that. I did some training in primary school stuff, and it was the most physically shattering stuff I think I've ever done. So no, it's definitely not easier for Dave. And I think what he's doing is really important, because that, from my point of view, I'm getting 11-year-olds coming in, in the year 7s coming in, and they're coming straight out of the junior schools and everything, and they're still hopefully full of fun, still excited about being in school and about learning at that point. And that's only going to be the case for as long as you've got the Daves in this world who are making their schools just wonderful places to be, and that sets up the future from there on in. At my level, I've always felt you try to keep that going. What's important about fun is that we all do better when things are fun. We do better in the workplace if we enjoy being with our work colleagues, and you can have a laugh and have a crack, as we say up here. You can have a gossip about things, and
Yeah.
have a joke at each other, or about things that are going on, and sharing your experience and having a bit of fun. And if you think about it, there's a well-known psychology principle. The things that we remember from our childhood and things like that, they're usually the most emotional things that happen. Now, sometimes that can be real trauma, something that's really bad that's happened. You always remember, I remember one of my favorite teachers taking my digital watch off me because I wouldn't stop looking at it. It was the first time I'd ever had a watch. This was at junior school. Now, I loved her, so she was forgiven, but I remembered that thing because it was like, no, why would she do that to me? And of course, we can all have those traumas. But the other things we remember are those great times, those fun times. When you get together with your friends and they, that you've known for years, and they say, "Oh, do you remember when we did such and such thing?" And it's suddenly all those memories come back. Oh yeah, I remember when we did that. No, that was really crazy, and we had all that kind of fun. And these memories are really strong, and they have a huge impact on you because you enjoyed it. You had it was fun, it was enjoyable, you laughed. These things stick in your memory, and it's well known that the neurons fire and wire so much better when there's emotional activity going on in that way. So let's make it positive emotion. No one remembers their dry, boring, dull lessons that they had, and who cares less about that? But people do remember those inspiring teachers who interested them, who made them laugh, who did things that were weird and strange, and those are the things that we remember. And so, it doesn't get in the way of learning. All my students learn. In fact, my third book, which is all about memory aids and revising, it's called Try Not to Laugh. And the idea is actually to really kind of supercharge the memory and be able to memorize things in very efficient ways. And you deliberately using fun to do that. But it's the whole idea is to come up with crazy, bizarre images that then stick in your head because they are so strange.
Also, like triggers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love that. So learning can be fun at any age, is what you're trying to say to us, Ken.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And more to the point, it should be. It actually is going to improve our memory and help us to be able to pass those exams.
I've got to pick up something you mentioned though, that sad watch story. I'm very sad about the, I can just imagine that one special thing is taken away. I wondered before I ask you my final question, can you remember then, just as you say, one of those happy things that's stuck in your mind from primary school? Is there, just to counterbalance, that negativity? What's a lesson or a project or something really fun you remember from primary, Ken?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, so I think, funnily enough, the same teacher. I grew up, I think, in quite a difficult time. I grew up in a coal mining town in the Midlands.
Whereabouts?
A little place called Colville.
Oh, wow, amazing!
And it's that was during the kind of late 70s, early 80s, but right back when the miners' strikes were happening, and it was a real depressing time. Everybody felt pretty miserable for a lot of the time, and it was just before the days of kind of like Ofsted and national curriculums and things like that, which gave a bit more kind of accountability to schools. I'm not a huge fan of Ofsted, but I do believe in accountability and working to schemes and and not just kind of like being completely off the wall and doing your own thing, because that's great when you've got an inspiring teacher. It's not so good when you haven't got a very good teacher. So I think we need those kind of frameworks. I think that they're very important. But this was just before those kind of days. So my infant school was, and junior school was quite dire. A lot of the teachers, there was still one teacher who had the slipper. That she would
What's
use.
The slipper?
That if you were really bad, you were sent up to the desk, and it would be a whack on the backside with the slipper that she kept in the drawer. Quite genuine. It was just in the days when the idea of corporal punishment was being kind of outlawed. But the headmaster had a cane in the corner of the room. Never used it, but he had that cane, and it was there for a reason. So I was just coming out of those eras. So the junior school teacher I had, who did take the watch off me, but that was because she was absolutely exasperated. It was entirely my fault. I would have done the same thing. Her name was Mrs. Clayton, and we all loved her. We all adored her.
Mrs. Clayton.
She was someone who had a lot of fun. And probably the thing I remember best was we looked forward to our Friday morning spelling test. We were given a load of words that we had to learn at the beginning of the week. We had a whole week to learn how to spell them. And then she would test them, and it would be a proper kind of little test. But when she was saying these words, and she was saying them out loud, she'd always use the word in context, and it would always be something funny. So she'd say, the next word is skipping. I saw Ken skipping through the daisies, or something like kind
Oh,
of
that's
roaring with
adorable.
laughter. And that was every week. It was like, imagine that, a spelling test being one of your favorite parts of
I
the week. And it
love
was, we all loved
that.
it just for her little quips and jokes. And it was always at our expenses, but it was so much fun. And it was, and she was adored, absolutely adored by
Beautiful.
generations of kids.
That's so beautiful. And for any educators listening, why not steal, if you're doing a spelling test with your children, steal Ken's top tip there of his reflection, something he loved. Put the sentence into context using the kids' names. I'm sure some of you do, but what a lovely, lovely thing. Making spellings fun. Fantastic, Ken. Thank you. So I can't believe we've only got 5 minutes left, Ken. Time flies when we are having fun here on Teachers Talk Radio. But I've just got the last question I wanted to ask you. And it's one that my students and I talk about a lot on campus. And I wonder what I think. I wonder if you're going to say similar to what I think, but I'm not going to say what I think yet. And what my students think, because this is quite a contested question, I think. So I wonder, do you think teaching is just a profession, or do you think teaching is a vocation? What's your thoughts?
Oh, without shadow of doubt, it's a vocation. It absolutely is a vocation, and it should be. If we want to be inspiring teachers, and I think if we're in the game, we've got to be inspiring teachers. You don't need to be all singing or dancing and able to juggle or anything like that. You just need to be really invested in your students. And I'm reminded. In my experience, went back when I was teaching here in Cumbria in a school, let's say for 8 years. And I used to open up my classroom every lunchtime, every break time. Kids would come up and they would, play on the keyboards and all this kind of stuff, and just hang around,
I love that.
and so on and so forth. And towards the end of my time there, I remember there was one particular student who'd been there for several years and was a member of our choir, and I ran the choir and all that kind of stuff. It was a parents' evening that I had, and her mum said to me, "You may not realise this, but my daughter came from a really bad background in a previous school where she was bullied very, very badly, and we moved to this school, and you've made her life a safer place, because the music department, which is where we were based, was a safe place for her to be." And I had no idea, absolutely no idea at all, about her background of this. It was just part of the ethos in the whole department. It's that this was a place where students could go, where they could be safe, they could just enjoy. And no rivalries or anything like that. Just have a laugh, do the stuff that we have to do, and get from that. And I've had that story several times before, where I found out that actually, I might have been the first adult that one of my students talked to about deep issues or problems that they were having at home or things like that. Some students will say, "You're the first adult who's ever taken me seriously, and just treated me as an equal," and things like that.
Love
And
that.
that's really important. That's way better than accolades, awards, Ofsted rankings or anything like. In my mind, when you've got students who'll say, "You know what, you made life safe for me. You made what was a difficult time in my life a real pleasure when I was in your department," or whatever. And it wasn't just me, of course. It was the other teachers that were part of that department. We had a real good department. We had laughs with each other. We were always playing practical jokes on each other, and the kids picked up on that, And it was like Dave was saying with his school. It's a family. I had my A-level students making me cups of tea and bringing them into my classes when I was teaching and things like that. It was great, and they
I
wanted
love
to do it. I
that.
never asked them to do it. They always wanted to do that because they just love being part of the family there, and that's important. You can't do that if teaching is just a profession. You go in, you teach your stuff, and you leave again. That's
Yeah.
no good. You've got to be someone who wants to be there for the kids and realize that you're spending, in many cases, more time with these kids than their own parents are. But, because you're spending huge lengths of time in school, day in, day out with them. And if you're doing extra after school stuff and all the rest of it, they may spend more quality time with you for a few short years than they are with their own parents. That puts you in a hugely privileged position. And you can't do that job properly, I think, if you just think of it as a profession. You've got to think of this as being a vocation. You are not just teaching a subject, you're making a change to these students' lives.
Oh my gosh, what an inspiring note to finish. See, so look, you and Dave were both equally inspiring.
Thank you.
I love that. And back to something that I really loved that stood out for me that you said at the start when you called yourself a lifelong learner. I think that goes hand in hand with this vocation, when we want to inspire and support and educate. That's something we strive for in ourselves as well. And so I think that's what's great about bringing educators together, because I do think we have some similar qualities that we share as well, and similar ambition and passion. And that's why I love things like Teachers Talk Radio. They just get a chance to bring us together, and get to hear about the stuff you've been doing. And so just to say thank you so much, Ken, for making time to come on the show today and talk to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Ken, if anyone wanted to contact you or get in touch or follow you, are you happy for anyone to find you on any channels?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and I think I'm on Instagram as well, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. So just either Ken Powell or D Ken Powell, you find me. Yeah, find me on Twitter. Love to chat to people.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ken. And I know anyone who's followed us from Teachers Talk Radio on Twitter will see Ken tagged in everything this morning as well. And Ken and Dave have both said they're happy for people to reach out. So thank you so much, Ken. And I wish you a wonderful weekend and just keep on inspiring.
You too, Poppy. Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.